Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ALTONA RARE EARTHS PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so on the Investor Meet Company platform. Before we begin, I would just like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I would now like to hand you over to CEO Cedric Simonet. Cedric, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you. So this presentation is going to be a relatively short one. The idea is to give our investors an update on what the company is doing. If you have followed recent RNSs from Altona, you know since February that we are implementing a portfolio expansion and diversification strategy into other critical raw materials, not just rare earths. And we have done already 2 acquisitions, a copper project in Zambia and a copper-silver project in Botswana. So I would like to explain a little bit why we took the decision to diversify the portfolio and our activities. I would like to tell you a little bit more about these 2 exciting copper projects. And I would also like to tell you what's happening with Monte Muambe, because Monte Muambe remains a key asset for the company, and we believe there is a lot of value in it. This is a usual disclaimer. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Monte Muambe. I just want to summarize what we have done so far. As you know, we acquired the project back in 2021. Last year, in October, we completed a scoping study, which included a maiden resource estimate, 13.6 million tons at 2.42% total rare earth oxide. The scoping study considered the production of 15,000 tons per year of mixed rare earth carbonate over a life of mine of 18 years. And the financials came with an NPV8 of $283.3 million, an IRR of 25%, and a capex of $276 million. The completion of the scoping study triggered the increase of our holding in the Monte Muambe project, in the Monte Muambe license, from 20 to 51%. So now we are at 51% ownership, which is also an important achievement. Last year, we lodged a mining concession application with the Mozambique government. In Mozambique, it's possible to get your mining license relatively early in the life of projects, so we want to take advantage of this. And the mining concession we applied for has a duration of 25 years. We expect that this is actually being processed currently, and we expect that it will come out sometime in the 3rd quarter. In terms of Monte Muambe, what are we doing at the moment? We are doing basically 2 activities which are aimed at de-risking, and we are using as little resources as possible on these 2 activities. We are really focusing on these 2 activities. The first activity is metallurgical testing. We have 100 kilos of representative ore samples at SGS Lake Fields in Canada, which is one of the best labs in the world for rare earth metallurgy. And we have another 70 kilos, which is in Australia, with another lab called Aurelia. So what are we doing exactly practically at the moment? In terms of the metallurgy, we are doing flotation testing. When we did the scoping study, we were only able to do 1 CITER test at the time. And now we are going to do about 30 CITER tests, so a lot more testing. In the scoping study, we had to use a parameter which is the grade of the concentrate, of the bastnäsite concentrate, which was 10% total rare earth oxide. So to remind you, at Monte Muambe, there are 2 processing steps. The first step is beneficiation, which includes crushing, milling, and flotation. That produces a bastnäsite concentrate. And that bastnäsite concentrate goes into the second step, which is hydrometallurgy, where the concentrate is leached and a synthetic product, a mixed rare earth carbonate of rare earths is produced, is precipitated. So if you look at the little chart on the bottom right side of the slide, you can see a pie chart. And that yellow section represents the OPEX. Okay, the pie chart represents the total OPEX of Monte Muambe as per the scoping study. And the yellow section represents the OPEX of the hydrometallurgy. It's 55%. It's enormous. It's the most expensive part of the project. So by taking the grade of the concentrate from 10 to 20%, that means that the feed that will go into the hydrometallurgy is going to be twice richer, twice more loaded in rare earths. And that means that it will cut basically into the OPEX of the hydrometallurgy for the project. So this is expected to have a significant impact on the financials of the project, on the cost base, and that will have an impact also on the capex. The second thing we are looking at in terms of metallurgy, you probably remember that originally Monte Muambe was considered to be a fluorspar project. Exploration for fluorspar was done about 10 years ago. At the time, a fluorspar resource was defined, but that resource was too small for Monte Muambe to be a standalone fluorspar project. However, now it's a rare earth project. We are looking at rare earth ore. This rare earth ore still contains about 15% fluorspar. So it's totally worth looking at the ore, which we are anyway going to extract, crush, mill, and put through a flotation plant to see if we can extract and separate this fluorspar. That would give us a byproduct, that would give us additional revenue. The second thing we are doing at the moment in terms of de-risking is a mining concession application. It is in process. We are following up with the government. So these two aspects, the metallurgy and the mining concession, are going to help de-risking the project. You might have seen in one of the RNSAs we published recently, we have received a strong interest from the US government on Monte Muambe. The US government could come to fund the project, but not at the stage of the pre-feasibility study where we are now. That is going to come later. As I will explain in a few minutes, it's very difficult right now for a junior exploration company to fund a rare earth project. So what we are doing is that we are actively seeking a strategic investor to fund the Monte Muambe PFS. And that funding may come in different forms. So when we say a strategic investor, we are looking at an investor who is going to need the product or who is going to need to secure a responsible source for the product. So this way, we think that we will be able to finance Monte Muambe separately from the rest of the activities of the company. And sorry, I've lost my thoughts. Anyway, this is a plan, strategic investors. We are already talking to several possible candidates. All right, so now we are called ALTONA Rare Earths. You might wonder why we've decided to go into copper. The reason is shown on this slide. The chart that you have on the top side, the upper chart on the right-hand side, this is the forecast for the neodymium and praseodymium oxide demand over the next 25 years, roughly. The NdPr oxide long-term fundamentals are still very, very strong. They are driven by the green energy transition. There cannot be a green energy transition, wind turbines or electric vehicles without rare earths to produce permanent magnets. And it is estimated that by 2040, the rare earth, the NdPr consumption will be 3 times what it is at the moment. So very, very strong fundamentals. However, if you look at the chart on the bottom side, this is the evolution of the price of the actual price of neodymium and price of neodymium in the case of this chart. And you can see that the price from 2020 has been picking up a lot, peaking at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, and then it has been dropping. So on the short term, these long-term fundamentals, we don't see them acting on the rare earths. There are several reasons why the price of rare earths has been falling lately. One is that the expected demand growth has been actually much slower than expected. And the second thing is that in 2023, there has been a surplus of rare earths on the market. 2024, there are expectations that there will be a deficit, so rare earth prices might pick up a little bit, but in 2023, there was a surplus. So the rare earth market is still in its infancy. It's a very immature market. It's a very new market because rare earth is a new commodity. And because of this, it is very unstable. And this instability might continue a little bit in time. So when you look back at Monte Muambe is going into production in at least 4 years, not before that. So the price of rare earths, the current price of rare earths, shouldn't be so relevant to the potential of Monte Muambe. But the fact is that investors in general look at the price of commodities when they make their decisions, and that does not affect only us, but that affects basically all the rare earth companies, the junior exploration companies that are on the rare earth market. You end up having the stock price of these companies following the trend of the commodities. So for us, this was an issue. We thought that it would be difficult to keep funding the company just based on Monte Muambe. So we decided to bring in new projects, and we looked carefully at what sort of project we could select. So on the top row here, these little boxes, you have the selection criteria that we use. First is the quality, the geological merits, the technical merits of the project, obviously. Second is a low entry cost, and you've seen the Botswana and Zambia RNSC. These are projects that are not very expensive. Third is a low initial exploration cost. These are projects that have got very, very good indication of potential, and I will take you more through this. But at the same time, they are grassroots projects. So the first phases of work, geophysics, geochemistry, are not going to cost a lot, and then we will do a few reconnaissance holes. So we can manage the cost like this. And last, we looked at the fundamentals and the market for different minerals, and we came to the conclusion that the most interesting metals at the moment were copper and lithium, and so far we have picked 2 copper projects. So we don't want to fill a basket with a lot of projects. We want to select a few very carefully chosen projects, and this is what we are doing. The objectives of this strategy, of this expanded strategy, number 1 is to reduce our exposure to only the rare earth prices. What I have just explained in the previous slide, we want to move away from being a rare earth only company. The second thing is that if we have several projects, that also means we will increase the news flow, and that's quite important, obviously, for the share price. By having different projects, we will also increase the value realization options. What I mean by this is that, for example, the copper market is very mature. You've got many players, you've got many mines in operation. If you have a copper project and you develop it to a certain point, at some point you can sell it easily, you can do a joint venture with a major, you can develop it. There are many different options. Whereas with a rare earth project, you don't have majors doing rare earths because the market is not yet developed. So having more projects in a diversified portfolio allows us to have more options to realize value from these projects. The last thing is that we wanted to diversify our jurisdiction exposure, our country exposure, and because of this, we selected projects which are in jurisdictions which are highly rated in Africa. Zambia is a very good jurisdiction, especially for copper, obviously. And Botswana is one of the top jurisdiction in Africa and one actually of the top jurisdictions in the world. If you look at the Fraser Institute report for 2022, you will see that the top 10 includes jurisdictions in North America, in the US and Canada, in Australia, and together with them, you've got Botswana. So very, very good jurisdiction. So again, we are not going randomly into this diversification. We thought about it very carefully. We've decided exactly what we are looking for, and we are implementing it strictly in accordance with our criteria and our objectives. So since we have gone into copper, let's look a little bit at the copper market. The top chart shows the recent evolution of the copper prices. I'm sure you're very much aware about the increase of copper prices over the last few months. I believe right now it must be around $4.3 per pound. Copper is a very interesting material. For us, what was interesting with copper was the stability and was also the maturity of the market with many players, many options to sell products and so on. But now because we positioned ourselves at the right time, we are getting into a commodity which is entering a bull market, which is even better for us. The usage of copper for the green energy transition is expected to double by 2035. So that's already huge in itself. There is no economically viable substitute for copper for the green energy transition applications. And what is happening at the moment, why the price is increasing, it's because over the past 10, 15, 20 years, the pipeline of exploration and development projects for copper has been completely insufficient to sustain the growing demand. So some analysts are predicting that by 2050, the supply of copper will be 19 million tons per year, and the deficit from a demand of 53 million tons per year will be 34 million tons per year. 34 million tons per year of deficit. This is absolutely crazy. So the fundamentals for copper are extremely good. And this situation of shortfall of the production capacity is not going to resolve itself in a short time. So copper is there to stay in a bull market, that is absolutely certain. And we are very happy to have been able to secure good copper projects now, because probably in a few months it will be too late. So let me take you through the Sesana project, which is located in Botswana. It's located in the Kalahari Copper Belt. It's a belt which passes through Namibia and Botswana. It's not the same one as the Central Africa Copper Belt in DRC and in Zambia. And the Kalahari Copper Belt is an emerging copper province of Africa. This area of Africa has got a sand cover. They are called the Kalahari Sands. They are several tens of meters thick. And these Kalahari Sands blanket what is underneath. You can't see it from the surface. So this has been an issue for previous explorers. But now with modern exploration methods, geophysics, geochemistry, it is possible to find copper deposit below the sands, to put them into production. And actually in the Kalahari Copper Belt, some deposits have already been found, like the Kwemakao Zone 5 underground, the Kwemakao Zone 5 deposit, which is now being mined underground. And this Kwemakao Zone 5 deposit is located just 25 kilometers from the Sesana project area. So As I've said before, this was a low-cost acquisition. We have an earn-in agreement which takes us to 85%. The total cost over 4 years is $370,000. 1/3 of this paid in cash, 2/3 in shares, and the initial commitment on the first phase in terms of cash is just $10,000. So very low cost. And we are really very happy to have been able to secure this project because the Kalahari Copper Belt is very hot right now and there is very little ground left. I think if we had come 3 months later, we would not have been successful. We were able to rapidly secure this project. The little photo of the road with the signpost for the Boseto plant and the Kwemacao Zone 5 underground mine, I took it last week when I was on site. And so to get to the site, I had to drive just past the Boseto plant and the Kwemacao underground mine. In the Kalahari Copper Belt, the controls of copper and silver mineralization, because all these deposits also have also have silver, 10 to 30 grams per ton. The controls are very well understood. Mineralization is found at the contact between 2 geological formations, the Dekar Formation and the Nguacopan Formation. These 2 formations have got different characteristics. Dekar is made of reduced siltstones, and Nguacopan of oxidized sandstone. So because of this contrast, when hydrothermal solutions are passing through the sandstones, they are leaching copper and other minerals, and then when they get to the reduced environment, they precipitate sulfide. The copper deposits there are sulfide deposits. One thing which is very, very interesting is that there were airborne geophysical surveys that were flown during the 1990s and the early 2000s. And so there is a very nice aeromagnetic map of the whole area, and it is possible to precisely identify the geological formations, hence the contact between the Dekar and Nguacopan formation, and it's possible to see exactly where it's passing at the surface. So this is very, very useful, and that was an important criteria for us to choose the Cesana project. You can look at the map on the right-hand side. The red outline is the license outline. And what you can see in blue is the trace of the contact between the 2 formations based on the airborne geophysics. If you look at the top left corner, you can see actually on the satellite image the Kwemacao underground mine with the 3 box cuts for the incline shaft entrances. You can see there is also another small deposit called Northeast Mango, which is a long strike. And this is on this blue line, which represents the contact between the 2 formations. And the contact is repeated because there is a lot of folding in the Kalahari Copper Belt. So the contact passes then a little bit towards the south into Arc Minerals license, into the Zone 9 deposit, which you can see again is just next to this blue line. And you can see the contact, the blue line, passing through the northern part of our license, of the Cesana license. We've got about 13 kilometers long of contact passing through our license. So we already know we are at the right spot. And what we are going to do now is geophysics and soil geochemistry using specific methods that are suitable for the geological context with the sands on top, to define drilling targets, and hopefully my objective is to start drilling by the end of this year. So potentially very, very exciting news by the end of this year. Let's go to Zambia. So the Kabompo South project is located in northwestern Zambia. It's located just next to a small copper occurrence known as Kamweji, a long strike, and it's located about 60 kilometers southwest of the Mufumwe copper mine, which has a resource of 22 million tons at 1.6% copper. And you can see the context is a little bit the same as in Botswana. You have this contact zone, which passes between sandstones and siltstones with the same potential mineralization controls. So you can see these blue lines are passing through the license very clearly, especially in the northeast corner of the license. So this license used to be held by Freeport-McMoRan, and then Freeport-McMoRan had some very large mining operations in Zambia. At some point, they decided to divest out of Zambia. So they were not going to keep a team just for a few exploration licenses, however interesting they were. They just exited the whole country. They left this license not because it didn't have any merits, just because they had taken a corporate strategic decision. So we've got some data coming with this license. It has been partly covered by a ground magnetometer survey, which shows some very interesting anomalies, and also some reconnaissance ionic leach sampling, which is not shown on the map, but it shows also an anomaly in the northeast corner, just where that contact is passing. So very, very interesting ground with data. And the next steps for Kabompo South are going to be very simple. We are going to reprocess the MAG data to extract as much information as possible. And very simply, we are going to do infill ionic leach soil sampling to define much better these anomalies, to see their shapes, and again, to define drilling targets. So I think I've covered everything. To recap a little bit what is going to happen in 2024 and to give you a hint of what is going to happen in terms of news flow. For Monte Muambe, the metallurgical results will come out. I'm hoping that they will come out it will come in batches. Some might come by the end of this month. The rest will come next month. So the metallurgy results very, very important because it can change completely the economics of the project, and that will also kind of isolate a little bit the project from the issues of rare earth prices going up and down at the moment. The mining concession, also very important to de-risk, and the quest for a strategic investor, which is advancing already. For the Cesana copper silver project, that is going to be our priority in terms of fieldwork. The completion of the transaction is expected to take place within a month or so, once we finish formalizing everything and sign the final agreement. The geophysics and geochemistry will follow immediately, and that will generate some news also. But even more exciting, more important, the start of drilling by the end of this year, and obviously a possible discovery. Kabompo South, same thing. We need to complete the transaction, and then, as I said, we will get into geophysics and geochemistry. But for now, we are going to focus our resources mostly on the Cesana project in Botswana. So I think I've covered everything. Thank you for listening. Jake, back to you.
Perfect, Cedric, that's great, and thank you very much indeed for your presentation this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company takes a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Cedric, we obviously received a number of pre-submitted questions ahead of today's event, and as you can see there in the Q&A tab, we've also received a number of questions throughout your presentation this afternoon as well. So firstly, thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. And Cedric, if I may now just hand over to you just to read out those questions and give your responses where it's appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. All right, so the first pre-submitted question is, do you see the Monte Muambe project possibly becoming similar in size to Pensana? The reserve statement for Pensana, I believe, is about 30 million tons. Right now, our resource statement is at 13.6 million tons. We want to grow a little bit this resource base, ideally during the pre-feasibility study, to a level between 20 and 30 million tons. So we might not be just as big as Pensana, but we will be very close. And what is important for me is not to try to break records in terms of size. I've already said that before. And what is important is to have a project that is viable and that brings value to our shareholders. The second pre-submitted question is, in a recent interview, you mentioned that you have been in discussions with the US government about Monte Muambe, but they said they would look to get involved at the DFS stage. Do you see the US government helping to fund the DFS? It's probably a little bit early to tell and to guarantee this, but I've seen a lot of interest. Really, we've met with 3 different agencies, and it's not only the US government that is interested. Yes, I would see the US government positioning itself once we've completed the pre-feasibility study, but that's my opinion. Next question. Are there any other governments looking to invest in a rare earth project in Mozambique, such as the UK, to provide a salt and chemical park with rare earths? Right. So as I've just said, there are other governments that are interested, but we've talked mostly with the US government so far, to be frank. We have not talked with the UK government about providing products for the salt and chemical park. One of the things you have to see is that one of the outputs of the metallurgy, I've talked a lot about the process and the cost structure and also the potential additional revenue from the fluorspar byproduct. But another output of the metallurgy is that it gives you samples of product. And when you have the samples of, when you have these product samples and when you have their chemical characteristics and physical characteristics, that's when you can start to have really meaningful conversations with off-takers and with refinery projects. So we expect that this sort of conversation would not happen now. It would happen a little bit later once we have a better idea of the specifications of the product. The next question is, with the completion of the scoping study and the positive outcome it revealed, what specific strategies are at your disposal to further enhance the economic potential of the project? So I've talked a lot about the metallurgy. That's kind of the no-brainer, the most important driver in terms of cost. But there are other drivers, of course, in the framework of the PFS. We will look at all the parameters, the mining parameters. We will look at the processing, the environmental parameters. The power supply is very important. We are very conscious that our products are going to be used for the green energy transition. So our products will need to be as net zero as possible. So it's not just a question of finances, but it's also a question of carbon at the end of the day. And one other thing that I want to look at very closely in terms of further enhancing the economic potential of the project is looking at doing a third step of processing, of metallurgical processing on site. If you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I spoke about number 1, beneficiation, which includes flotation. Number 2, hydrometallurgy. We would like to do number 3, partial separation of neodymium praseodymium oxide. That would add a lot of value for the country. That would add also a lot of value for our investors. The next question. How are you prioritizing capital allocation, particularly in light of the macroeconomic environment? So yes, the macroeconomic environment is very difficult to navigate. What we are doing at the moment is that we are very careful with our resources. We are also looking at reducing costs, even at the corporate level. Very carefully. So these resources that we have, we want to use them in the best possible way. I've explained that there are two priority actions that we need to keep continuing with Monte Muambe to increase the likelihood of us securing a strategic investor. That's the metallurgy and the mining concession. But apart from that, we are not spending anything on Monte Muambe. And as I explained, our focus is going to be to get value out of the Sesana project in Botswana as fast as possible and possibly to drill by the end of this year. So the answer to your question is that there will be a lot of focus on Sesana. It will be given a very high priority. The last question I have on my screen, what type of strategic partners are you seeking for the rare earth projects? Miners, traders, OEMs? Well, basically, we are looking at all these options. We are very open, but what we want is someone who understands the rare earth market, someone who needs the products, even if there are some other steps along the value chain in between. So it could be also OEMs. And we want someone who is going to support the project on the long term, obviously, and to have interest in seeing the project get into production. All right.
Cedric, if I may just jump back in there, and thank you very much indeed for being so generous of your time there and addressing all of those questions that came in from investors. And of course, if there are any further questions that do come through, we'll make these available to you immediately after the presentation is ended, just for you to review, to then add any additional responses, of course, where it's appropriate to do so. And we'll publish all those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But Cedric, perhaps before really just looking to redirect those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, thank you again for listening, and thanks for your help, Jake. So the message I would like to pass to our investors is that, as you've seen, Altona is evolving. We are not evolving randomly, just having a knee-jerk reaction. I've been thinking about this change for several months now, since last year. And we've been constructing this strategy. We've looked very carefully at what we want to achieve. And we are following exactly this strategy. We are not diverting, and we are going to continue to follow it. So what I want to say is that the strategy and the objectives of the company are very focused. And you've seen this already with the delivery of these two copper projects on which we are going to focus now. So I want to assure you that we are going to follow exactly this strategy.
Perfect. Cedric, that's great. And thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ALTONA Rare Earths PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good evening to you all.
Thank you.